If you are someone like me who loves using aces in MLB DFS, no matter what their salaries may be, today is the slate for you because we have Shane Bieber, we have Yu Darvish, we have Walker Buehler. I think Freddie Peralta is in that discussion as well. Shohei Ohtani is pitching for today. Currently not a pitcher on FanDuel, so we'll see if that changes later on. But you got a lot of high strikeout, good arms available for you. And to me, that's worth it no matter what the salary may be. I want those points. They're going to get those points, and I'm going to feel good about them pretty much no matter what happens. What we're going to do today is rank those pitchers, rank those aces. We're actually going to talk about a value play who I do like as well, and then look for value at hitters to try to make it easier to jam in those stud pitchers for tonight. So let's dive on in and break it on down. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to analyze tonight's 11-game main slate. Actually 10-game main slate with lock set for 7:05 for this evening. There are some weather notes for today. Once again, seems like we are in the thick of that right now. The winds are blowing out to right field at 10 miles per hour for the Yankees and the Astros. It is just 61 degrees, so not like ideal hitting conditions, but like take what you usually have for 61 degrees, bump it up a bit. Given the wind blowing out. It is notable the wind is out, but make sure you don't go too crazy there given the temperature is low. There is rain in Boston for the Tigers and the Red Sox. It looks like it's raining all day, and that's annoying. Could be moving out later on. I think that if we're looking for like a quote-unquote comp, it's very similar to the Cardinals-Mets game last night, so there is some risk here for sure. It's also just 49 degrees. It's downgraded hitters there. So the Boston situation, not ideal from a DFS perspective. It's also cooler in Chicago and Minneapolis, which means we should downgrade the bats for the Dodgers, Cubs, Rangers, and Twins for tonight. As always, we'll have an additional weather update later today during the 4 p.m. stream. That's at 4 p.m. on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Make sure you are subscribed there on your platform of choice. Get your questions in as well. We'll break down all the big questions for tonight. Also, we can talk about the pitchers there, stacks, one-offs, whatever is on your mind. We can talk about all of that there. Also up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed right now, you can find our PGA DFS podcast for this week with myself and Brandon Gadula breaking down the Wells Fargo Championship from a DFS perspective. Interesting week because it is a pretty good field trying to decide how do we prioritize the studs, what kind of roster construction do we want, how do the tiers break down. Find that by searching for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. What's up, basketball fans? FanDuel has partnered with the NBA to provide fans with an exclusive opportunity to win a trip to this year's NBA playoffs. All you have to do to enter is enter the free qualifying contest on FanDuel from May 3rd to the 16th for a chance to win. FanDuel will add together your 3 highest scoring lineups to get your combined score. The top 50 players at the end of the contest will win big bonus prizes on top of the qualifying contest payouts, including a trip for 2 to the NBA playoffs, autographed gear from Fanatics, NBA.com gift cards as well. Head over to FanDuel.com/NBA-road-2-playoffs for more information. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's check out the pitching preview for this Wednesday main slate. Shane Bieber is the highest salaried pitcher on FanDuel for today. He checks in at $12,200. We have Yu Darvish at $11,800, followed by Walker Buehler at $10,000. Freddie Peralta is $9,000. Those are the guys we will have to rank here and discuss how we want to view them for today. Again, Shohei Ohtani listed as a hitter right now because they announced late that he'd be a starter. So I'm not sure if he'll be a pitcher available on FanDuel. I probably wouldn't use him because he's had a lot of walks, and that does drive down his how far he goes in games. But just noting to you that if you're looking for him, you'll find him as a hitter as of right now. Chris Bassett and Robbie Ray, the others at $8,000 and higher. So let's rank these 4 pitchers, the top 4 guys, those 4 guys at $9,000 and higher: Bieber, Darvish, Buehler, and Peralta. Usually I don't want to let matchups dictate too many of my decisions, because pitcher quality matters a lot. I don't want to use, some third-tier guy because of a good matchup, when I could instead use like a Shane Bieber type person. I am letting matchup dictate my view of the studs here today, and that's going to put me on Yu Darvish as my number 1 pitcher for tonight's slate. And the reason I'm okay with that is that Yu is not a third-tier pitcher. He's not that far behind Shane Bieber. I would prefer Bieber straight up if given both in the same circumstances. But Yu's situation is perfect for tonight. He is at home, and he's facing the Pirates, who are a Like, is pitiful too harsh? They're not great. They're a not great offense. A 74 WRC plus against righties since the start of last year. That is 10 percentage points worse than any other team on the main slate for today. They have a 24% strikeout rate. They never draw walks. They never make hard contact. And Darvish is at home. That is literally the perfect situation you could concoct for a pitcher. Darvish is good enough to take advantage of that. His velocity is down this year, so we do want to focus on just the 2021 numbers. But even then, with the velocity being down, he has a 3.12 skill interactive ERA, a 33% strikeout rate, and the barrel rate against is 7.1%. He's done that despite a lot of non-elite matchups. He's faced the Dodgers twice. He's faced the Giants twice, and the Giants are striking out quite a bit this year, but a lot of lefties in that lineup. Kind of a tough spot for most pitchers, given that they never really have a platoon advantage. And the Dodgers are the Dodgers. So that's a lot of tough spots there for you. Those are 4 of his 6 starts. The Pirates are technically not a super high strikeout matchup, but it doesn't matter. They do nothing with the balls they put in play. They got just 3 hits against Darvish when they faced back in Pittsburgh on April 12th. Plenty of time has passed since then, so no concerns about it being a repeat matchup. Darvish has looked really good in his past 3 starts against much tougher competition, so I think he needs to be at the top of our list as a result of that. So I don't want to let matchup dictate where I go, but when it's very similar pitchers, and Darvish and Bieber are not super similar, but like they're close enough, and the matchup is going to favor Darvish by a lot, I will take the easier matchup and go Darvish number 1 for tonight. Among those 4 guys, I will put Shane Bieber second, which means I have Buehler third. We'll talk about Freddie Peralta later on, but Bieber is second for me, even though the salary for him is a lot higher than those guys. He is 12.2, Buehler is 10, so $2,200 difference there, $3,200 between Bieber and Peralta. But Bieber is, I think, worth that gap, and I did give a lot of thought to going with Buehler over him, and it's a very defensible take to go Buehler because I think they're in the same tier to me. I just couldn't pass up how dominant Bieber has been. He hasn't been quite as dominant this year as last year, using a ton of sliders, which has led to more walks, some more hard contact, but the strikeouts have stuck. He has a 40% strikeout rate in 6 starts, a 2.52 skill interactive ERA. Buehler's strikeout rate in just a 3-start sample is about 10 percentage points lower. So a smaller sample and a 10 percentage point gap, that's a lot. I prefer the matchup for Buehler over the matchup for Bieber, but it's not enough of a matchup advantage for Buehler to erase the gap between them as starting pitchers. The Royals don't strike out very much for Bieber here. That's kind of annoying. They rank 6th in strikeout rate against righties this year alone. Cubs rank 25th. That is who Buehler is facing. But again, the gap in strikeout rate between Bieber and Buehler is really big. Buehler is pitching in a National League park, which means he doesn't have to face a DH, but he also could get yanked for a pinch hitter. Bieber has no concerns like that. He's got an average 106 pitches per start. He's been at 100 or higher in every start except for the first. So I think it's fully justifiable if you want to rank Buehler higher, rank Buehler second behind Darvish. And I want exposure to both. I just view the edge you get in using Bieber as being big enough to swallow the worst matchup, swallow the higher salary. I think that Bieber is worth that for today. So to me, the ranking of the top 3 is Darvish, Bieber, Buehler. I think that Bieber and Buehler are in the same tier where not elite circumstances. Darvish is the cash game play for sure. And then I would go Peralta 4th. We'll talk about him and things to watch. But Peralta is $9,000, 4th highest salary guy on the slate. So I didn't want to burn him here in the value section. We'll get to him later on. I want to find someone a little bit cheaper, give you a very different roster construction than what you have if you go with Darvish, Bieber, et cetera, et cetera. So let's talk Brady Singer. He is $7,400. He is at home facing Cleveland, so facing Walker Buehler. And there is some risk here because we saw Singer struggling his last time out. He had 3 walks and 1 strikeout through 2 innings, took a line drive off his heel, and then he left the game. It was a rough start before he got hurt. The injury to me is not a concern. He threw a bullpen earlier this week. If they're good at letting him go, it means we should feel good as well. And the rough start, it was concerning, but it was also a really big deviation from how he's been pitching overall this year. He's been great through his first 5 starts, including that bad start. He has a 3.74 skill interactive ERA with a 26% strikeout rate. The one thing he did really well last year was keeping the ball on the ground. He is still doing that this year as well. That's why I'm willing to believe in what he's doing. His velocity is up, and he was already getting some strikeouts last year. The ground balls were there too, as mentioned. So if you already get ground balls, you have the foundation for being a solid pitcher. But then you add velocity and add strikeouts. That's how you take the next step into being a legitimate, like not an ace, but an above average pitcher for daily fantasy. Cleveland's not a super high strikeout team. Their strikeout rate is up to 24% against righties. It's been creeping up. They don't do a whole lot else. A 92 WRC plus, just a 32% hard hit rate. I think it's a good spot. The salary means you're going to have a big difference in your Singer lineups than even your Buehler lineups and your Peralta lineups, but especially different from your Bieber and your Darvish lineups. So if you want to get to like Ron Acuna Jr., Nelson Cruz, Byron Buxton, it's going to be a lot easier to do so with Singer. So I think there's justification to use Singer. I think we can use all 5 pitchers for tonight, the 5 guys we discussed, the 4 aces, and then Singer. It is more spread out than I usually want to be at that position, but I think it's okay for today. Big slate, as long as you're multi-entering, I can be okay using all 5 of those guys and kind of seeing what happens. So let's move into the stacks for today. And throughout the stacks, we're going to have a pretty decent focus and trying to identify some value plays. So we're going to go through that, and that will be the main focus throughout today. But the main stack for me today is the Twins. They're facing Hyun-Jung Young, and he's making his first start for the Rangers today. He has a pretty interesting profile. He was pretty solid, but not dominant in the KBO where he pitched previously. And Young kind of looks the same in his 2 relief outings as what he did over in the KBO. That means I think the Twins are a worthwhile stack here. Young projects to be a low strikeout guy. He has a 9.4% swing and strike rate in his 2 relief outings. He has a 15% strikeout rate. It's a small sample, but if you look at the bat projections by Derek Carty over on Fangraphs, they have Young projected at a 21% strikeout rate. That's largely as a reliever. So if we shift into the rotation here, you'd expect that number to come down. He's not someone who will walk a lot of guys, but that means that Young will likely let up a lot of balls in play, and that's one aspect of stacking. We want to maximize balls in play. The other is the nature of those balls in play, and that's a bigger question here because Young was a big ground ball guy in the KBO. He had a 59% ground ball rate last year. That's the one year we have batted ball data for the KBO. That's a plus for sure. He ranked 10th out of 35 qualified starters in homers per 9 innings. So that's good. But it's against a different level of competition, and we don't need him to be near the top of that list. We just need to. We don't need him to allow a ton of homers. We just need him to let up balls in play and not be an outlier in the batted ball department. And it seems like that should be the case. I think that means we can stack against him here with the Twins. It may wind up being a bad idea, but in DFS, we really do need to try to be aggressive. We can't really wait and see what happens. So I'm gonna give it a swipe here. If it works out, awesome. If not, lesson learned for the next time out. But I do think this is the right move for today specifically in stacking the Twins from a DFS perspective. Now, as mentioned, the Twins have some guys we're going to have a tough time getting to, like Byron Buxton, Nelson Cruz. If you go Singer, you want them. If you go Peralta, you want them. But like there are some potential value plays in here. Mitch Garver's been finally hitting at the dish. He's $2,700. Kyle Garlick, he had COVID, and he's been a little bit they haven't been necessarily super aggressive with him since he came back. So I would be hesitant about that. But if he hits high in the order, given they're facing a lefty, I'd be willing to use him. So check out Garlick, check out Garver, and then see what you can afford elsewhere, because I do think that the Twins are worthwhile for today. Now, the reason I can talk about the Twins as the top stack, despite the fact they're not like some big value plays, is because our second stack is only value plays. That is the Milwaukee Brewers. And the reason they're value plays is because they're a bad offense. We've been using pitchers against them regularly most of the year and also last year. Last night, Aaron Nola, 55 points against them, worked out pretty well. I don't want to stack this team. I do think it's wise to do so here against Chase Anderson. Anderson was successful his last time out. He held the Mets to 1 run over 5 innings. He did lean more on his cutter in that start, so it's possible he's making a change here. That could lead to some improvements, but his velocity was still the same. So for now, I'm going to lean on the full season data, which is much less flattering for Anderson. In his 5 starts, he has a 4.90 skill interactive ERA with a 19% strikeout rate. He's letting up barrels 10.4% of the time, and that number actually increased in his most recent start. So he fared well, but he let up a couple of barrels there, not getting in ground balls. He did get by his last start because his strikeout rate was high, and he could duplicate that again here because the Brewers are such a bad offense. But if he doesn't, he's likely to get knocked around. So the Brewers, I think, are in play for stacking. And the reason that's pretty enticing is because it's a bummer that Christian Yelich is back on the injured list, but it's very possible we get this entire lineup with not a single guy with a salary higher than $3,000. That makes it a lot easier to get to guys like Bieber and like Darvish. So they do get downgraded with Yelich out, but the value is pretty enticing. One guy I find very interesting here is Luis Urias. He was a decent prospect back in the day, came over to Milwaukee and hasn't done much in the majors previously, but he does have a 47% hard hit rate against righties this year specifically. His barrel rate is 10.7% overall. Hitting higher in the order recently. He's $2,500, has a stolen base this year. I like all that. I think he's pretty fun at $2,500. And this whole team makes it easier to get to Darvish or Bieber. So yeah, they stink. Yeah, Anderson looked better last time out. There is risk here, but there's risk in every stack. They help us get upside elsewhere. So I kind of think the Brewers are okay for today. The Phillies bullpen has been just hideous recently, so I'm okay with the Brewers. I'm okay with rolling it out there, see what happens. I think they do make a lot of sense, so I'll make them my second stack for today, and hopefully they can let me get to my guy Byron Buxton in my twin stacks. For the final stack, we have three options I think are in consideration here, I guess four, kind of. I considered all three of the Yankees, Braves, and Astros for this slot, and I would have potentially gone Red Sox if not for their weather, but if we're seeking out value, trying to find ways to make it easier to afford Darvish and Bieber, that should dictate how we play things here and how we rank these stacks. And that's going to put the Braves highest on my list, which may seem weird because it's Ronald Acuna Jr. and Freddie Freeman, but the rest of their lineup, very, very affordable. We'll talk about the other offenses here in things to watch. The Braves are facing Eric Fetty, who has looked really nice this year. He has a 4.23 skill interactive ERA. His strikeout rate is 26%, which is actually double what he had last year. That's good, but it's also part of the reason that I'm not convinced that this strikeout rate sticks. If it doesn't, the Braves might jump all over him. There are two reasons I'm not yet convinced on Fetty. Those are the underlying numbers and the matchups he has had. So far this year, Fetty has a 7.1% swinging strike rate and a 23.2% CSW percentage. If you don't know CSW percentage, league average around 28.4% for starting pitchers. He's at 23.2%. He's below league average. It's the exact number he had back in 2019, and his swinging strike rate is almost equal to then too. And he had a 12% strikeout rate that year. It likely means that he had a lower strikeout rate than he deserved, but realistically, we should expect his strikeout rate, I would think, somewhere between 18 to 20%. That's the danger zone for a pitcher. He's letting up a barrel 10% of the time. It was 8.3% last year. He does get some ground balls, Fetty does, but not enough to really make you worry. And he's also benefited from some very nice matchups. Doesn't get that today. Atlanta ranked 7th at WRC plus against righties based on just 2021 data. It'll be the second time this year Fetty has faced a top 14 team by WRC plus. The other time was against Atlanta. Faced them earlier on in his first start this year. They chased him after just 1 2/3 innings, 5 earned runs against him. So they did really well there. And I think they could do really well once again here. I feel decently confident in them, even though they are risky due to the strikeout rate. So the Braves grade out pretty well, and they actually do give us some value plays. The reason they give us value is because of the Travis d'Arnaud injury. That stinks. It's a good hitter to loosen that lineup. But Austin Riley and Dansby Swanson hit in the middle of the order last night. They're both $2,400. Marcell Ozuna is $3,000. Ozzy Albies is $3,200. They're a very easy team to stack, and I wouldn't rule out getting to Acuna and Freeman if you pair them with the Brewers. So I would say for tonight, let's say you got one lineup, I would go pick your poison between Darvish and Bieber. I would bet that Darvish is the highest, the most popular pitcher on the slate. So maybe you go to Bieber as a pivot, but then plug in your Brewers stack and then decide, do you want to go Twins or Braves with the other one? Both teams should have some value plays depending on what the Twins lineup looks like, but I think that's the way you start things for today. Start with the Brewers and then see which of the higher salary teams you can get to from a stacking perspective. Let's go back to the Brewers here as we go to things to watch and talk about Freddie Peralta. I think he's very interesting at $9,000. And even with the aces on this slate, Peralta still deserves consideration and potentially exposure in your player pool. He's been filthy. In his 5 starts, he has a 39% strikeout rate with a 2.95 skill interactive ERA. He does still walk guys. He does let up hard contact, and that's why I'm not going to be as high on him as Buehler, Darvish, or Bieber, but he has a path to a ceiling game, so I'm likely to have him in my player pool tonight. So again, I love Darvish and I love the other guys too, but I think that the way I'll do it is I might actually have exposure to all 5 guys. I don't think this is a single entry type slate for me. It's a slate where I do want multiple entries, and I want to use those on getting exposure to guys like Darvish, but also additionally the other 4. The ranking, though, Darvish, Bieber, Buehler, Peralta, Singer for pitchers for tonight. I would try to allocate my exposure appropriately based on those rankings. If the Red Sox game does play tonight, I would be good stacking them against Casey Mize. The temperature's low, so keep expectations in check there, but everything else for them is pretty interesting. Mize is letting up a lot of balls in play. Many of those are being hard struck. If the weather were better, I think you could make the case that the Red Sox are the top stack of the night. As it stands, they're currently 5th for me. I have to keep an eye on the weather to see if it plays, but because they're 5th, I'm okay being a little bit lower on them and potentially not taking on the risk and seeing if that game plays. Now, the reason they're 5th, didn't talk about the 4th-ranked team, is because I do think the Yankees and the Astros are in play. So the top 3 teams are the Twins, the Brewers, and the Braves. Number 4 for me is the Astros. They're facing Jordan Montgomery. He has below average marks for this slate in both strikeout rate and barrel percentage. They have a ton of righties in that lineup. So the Astros, number 4 for me. The Yankees are 6. Red Sox 5, Yankees 6. Yankees facing Luis Garcia, pitching really well this year, but some of that has come in relief. So they're an option. The Yankees have some value plays. The Astros, not as much. So I think it's the top 3 teams first with the Twins, Brewers, Braves. And then we'll go Astros 4, Red Sox 5, Yankees 6, and the Red Sox keep an eye on that game to see if it does play. The stacks ranked 3rd through 6th. They're pretty even for me. So come back at the 4 p.m. show today. Ask me then if anything has changed. I think I'm pretty good with them with where I had them ranked, but we can talk about that later on. And you can ask about other stacks as well. 4 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. Make sure you subscribe there, but also make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. In addition to that PGA podcast mentioned before, we have NBA and NHL from Tom Vecchio, USC via Austin Swaim. I've got NASCAR from Darlington. The throwback weekend is this week. That's on Friday. So make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. If you have questions for me before the 4 p.m. show, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for setting up the video side of this call for today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.